Live from Atlanta, Georgia, it's the Zach Ballinger Show, where we help you find your direction through passion and purpose. My name is Zach Ballinger. I am your host. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are streaming live via Facebook and YouTube. If you have any questions today during the show, please feel free to comment in the comment section. We have an exciting guest here today. Robb, thank you so much for being a part of the show today.
Zach, it's wonderful to be here. Been really looking forward to this for quite some time. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I just want to give my listeners a little format for the show. So what we're going to do first, we're going to ask Robb some questions about his background, learn more about his career. We'll get into some long format questions. And then, like I said, you'll have a chance to ask questions out there. So Robb, what is your exact occupation, title, and job?
Sure. Right now, I am the founder of Westport Studios, LLC. We're an audio and mixing company for folks who do podcasts or ads or whatever they need. Our little slogan is audio for everyone. And so I founded that company this year in the midst of the pandemic to say, hey, you know what? I can be my own boss, number one. And number two, there's a lot of people out there in the audio space like you are, Zach, and also like I am with my own podcast that probably need some guidance, probably need some help in getting their show ready to roll. So that's what we founded Westport Studios on.
And so what was your experience before you founded this company? Were you in audio or in a different industry?
Way different industry. It's funny. I went to college to actually be a TV news anchor, and I really wanted to do that. But when you want to be on air, whether it's radio or television, you have to be willing to go anywhere in the United States, basically. If you want to be on NBC Nightly News, you have to start reading the Farm Report in the middle of nowhere, Iowa at 3 a.m. and hope that somebody says, oh man, that guy really reads the Farm Report well. So I didn't go into what I was initially wanting to start with from my college career. And sometimes you'll hear me say that maybe college wasn't the right place for me in that case. But what my career eventually transformed into was a number of jobs that were initially what I would call low skill. And that would be, your customer service, working for big box retail, things like that. I eventually cracked into working boutique retail for a major sports team, which was kind of cool, really short. Then I got into nonprofits briefly, and that really taught me how to blend with people and really kind of listen to them as far as it's going towards the what's the word I'm looking for? The relationship building, I guess, is the best way to describe that. And that I eventually turned into a career with a membership-based company here in Wisconsin that was 100% focused on their customer when I got hired for them. And that was back in 2014. And from there until 2019, when I left the company, I started as a customer service rep. I left as a person who had won no less than 10 awards for customer service design, as well as the 2018 Stevie Award for customer service for best e-commerce customer service in North America. So that growth period right there was scary and uncomfortable, but that my background is massive amounts of customer service with a bit of hiring and other things sprinkled in.
So, it's interesting because I can tell by your voice, either it's media or radio. You certainly have the voice for that. So I noticed you have that skill right away. Now, you kind of gave us a time frame of your owning your own audio company. What do you like most about your job right now? What are you passionate about?
What I'm passionate about is when somebody comes to me and says, Robb, I want to upgrade my show, or I want something that really pops for my product as far as an ad. The thing that just keeps me going every day is when I send them a sample of the thing that we've kind of cooked up together, and they listen to it and they say, oh my gosh, I never thought this could sound this so professional. And giving people that legitimacy of, hey, this is what you as a entrepreneur or a business owner can sound like, that's what gets me up and keeps me going every single day. And that's one of the favorite things about my job.
So let's say you're in high school right now and you're listening to the show. You know, when I was in high school, I was telling a guest this the other day. I probably knew
Mhm.
about 9 careers on my hand, like a teacher. That's basically all I could think of. And so they're out there listening. They're like, "What the heck does an audio company owner do?" Can you kind of break it down at an elementary level? Like, what is your exact job specifics?
Sure. Well, a lot of people like the sound of my voice for their show. So a good chunk of what I do every day is talking to a microphone. And that's really a basic thing about it, but there's editing, making it sound nice, maybe giving a different inflection for a voice. So it's not just yakking into a microphone 24/7. There's a whole lot of other things out there too. So there's the production part, but there's also the marketing, the sales, the prospecting for new customers, the remedial portions of fixing things that didn't quite go 100% right. It's almost like you are everything in a big company: marketing, IT, uh, customer service, production, everything all kind of lumped into one, because the buck stops with you when you're the founder, when you're the owner. It's your four walls, as somebody once told me, your four walls of your shop, if you will. But most of my time is spent cultivating other people out there who are looking for some help with their audio.
And so, you answered what you're passionate about, but on the flip side, what's somebody should know about being what you are, like something that's you don't like about your job or something that's difficult?
This is one of the best things I've ever had said to me, as far as when you are an entrepreneur, when you're a small business owner, when you're somebody who is not necessarily a one-man show, but close in a lot of cases. I had a sales coach a couple of years ago, and he said to me, "Rob, if you're entering into outside sales, which is what prospecting for new customers is, it's all on you. Nobody is coming over the hill to save you. There is no cavalry. You are on your own, and you either live or die by what you do in business on your own, what you do. Nobody else, nothing." And that was a real game changer for me, because in the job I was in, I sort of I was a little bit uh, aggressive against that, if you will, or maybe that's the term I want to use, to say, no, that's not right. It's not that way. And then I got a real big helping of humble pie in that case. And I used that sort of mistake and that failure in that job to say, you know what? When I go into business for myself, I have to be my biggest fan. I have to be my number one person who's out there going, I can help your business with audio books, recordings, video, things along those lines. I have to be the one to do that. And I have to be my number one fan. And that goes for anybody in any career. You have to be your number one fan at what you do. Nobody else can be that for you.
Only you advocate for yourself. That's some great advice. What kind of skills do you think someone needs to do your job? What kind of things do they need to learn, or what kind of innate abilities do they need to possess?
The biggest one, I think, is you need some level of computer literacy. And that's probably better for folks nowadays than it was maybe 10 years ago, things like that, as we've had a generation grow up with smartphones and all these things that have just been sort of totally ubiquitous as part of their life. But if we look at somebody like maybe my dad, he's 68, and this is not a career that he could readily step into, because he doesn't have the expansive knowledge of, okay, if I need to go online, maybe I can Google something, but that's not exactly what I'm looking for. It's funny, one of the strongest skills for this job is almost your Google foo, because there are so many free tools nowadays out there to help make your own content, that if you know exactly kind of what you want and how to ask for what you want in the search engine, you can probably find somebody who does it in a freemium model, and that's really cool.
Now, Rob, you said something that you started your business this year. Was this before or after the pandemic?
I'm going to go with during in this case, because I was working a job at the time, one of those jobs that was a pay the bills job. Literally, you go to work, you do your thing for 8 hours, you go home. And it's like, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad money. And if you were a younger person, you would have, if I was 18 and making the amount of money I was making there, I would have been living the life, that's for sure. But when you have a mortgage and all these other things, it kind of wasn't that big of a living large kind of job. But I did this job for 5 months. It was a contract position. And literally within a day of the pandemic sort of being declared at the beginning of April, I was out of work. And I had been thinking the entire time that I'm stuck in this job that I'm not going to call it a crap job. It was a good job for the right person. I like to be more creative. I like to do more. I like to not be chained to a desk and answering a phone 8 hours a day. That's not me. But it might be you. You know, if somebody out there might really enjoy that, do their 8 and go. There's nothing wrong with that. I wanted to do something more. So I came up with the concept for, hey, I should start a podcast. And that eventually led into developing Westport Studios as a whole, because I said, well, oh my gosh, if I do a podcast, what if other people come to me and say, hey man, I like your podcast, I want you to do some work for you, or for me rather, can I pay you? And that's exactly what happened. So I had to found a company because I needed to get paid by other people who were interested in my vocal talents after hearing some of the stuff that I do on my show as well.
So you talk about your company now is called Westport Studios, correct?
Correct.
So before you went full-time in your job, were you exploring this idea of doing a different field, or did it all come to you this year?
I'd been playing around with it for probably about 2 years. After I left that company where I had that huge customer service growth spurt, that was an Inc. 5000 company. And great people. I can call any one of them up for a cup of coffee right now. I'm still got some great relationships there, hundreds of great relationships, which was kind of mind blowing. But the biggest thing is I just didn't want to be a grunt anymore, I guess is the biggest thing. I didn't want to be somebody who was just put in the rank and file. I wanted to be a leader and a developer of customer service thought. And this, when you have your own customers, you get to be that, which is really great. The other part of that is that when you enter an organization, and the organization that was the Inc. 5000 one that I entered, again, great company, great people. When you enter an organization like that and it's growing, it tends to bring in pieces and people from other places. And if you come in at the bottom level like I did, I was hired when there were about 38 people working at this organization. When I left, there were 238 people, which is, really big growth. When you get that growth spurt, a lot of times I got promoted 4 or 5 times in 4 or 5 years, which is pretty crazy. So you didn't get that mastery. I didn't get that mastery of being a long-time manager and be able to move into those upper echelon positions. Now, the nice thing is that I was able to take all of the experience from watching other people and apply it to what I'm doing now. But at the same time, they say, stay in a job for 2.5 to 3 years to master it. That was something that was kind of missed for me. And I certainly hope by running my own business, I can finally achieve that in a number of areas for, directing places and people and things.
You hit on 2 things that I wanted to talk about. Is number one, I always encourage people to diversify their portfolio in their careers. Financial advisors tell us to do that all the time with our assets, and I'm not sure why we don't do it with our career journeys. So if you're stuck in something like you were, that you weren't being fulfilled at the end of the day, why not experiment doing some side things, some volunteering, some relationship building with other things? Why not experiment? Like you had this kind of passion for customer service and audio, so you started playing around with this a couple of years ago. I often find successful entrepreneurs don't just jump off into the boat right away. They don't just jump from the dock to the boat automatically. And I hear so many questions about, well, Zach, when do I know when to start my business? And for you, it had to be, of course, lack of income, and that's perfectly fine. But there's other people out there that may be chained to the desk. And when we look at the statistics from Gallup, we see about 70% of them out there that really don't like their jobs. And if you think about that 70%, and I tell people it's okay right now not to like your job, but is your whole plan to live like that for 30 years? Because if it is, you've got the wrong plan. And so I love it how that you first played around for 2 years in this segment, and then you also talked about, using your skills that you developed as finding your strengths. Your strengths, obviously, customer service, your voice, your ability to adapt to customers. So I really like that you shared those 2 points. When you were a kid, what did you dream about being? When you were in middle school, when you were growing up? It doesn't have to be obviously owning your own audio company, but what was your dream career?
It was really funny because I've gone through a couple of them. When I was like a kid, I wanted to be a doctor because my dad was a dentist, and and my grandfather was a doctor as well. And I wanted to, continue that legacy of doctors in the Conlon family, and that's cool. But that wasn't who I was born to be, which is kind of a funny thing. And realizing that over time was like, maybe I would be an okay doctor, but I think there's other things that I could be a heck of a lot better at. So as a child, again, I want to be a doctor, keep mom and dad happy, things like that. That eventually progressed into wanting to be a teacher, and that maybe tweaks into that customer service thing just a little bit of helping people and helping kids grow and things along those lines. I wanted to teach high school history for the longest time, and I actually went to college initially for that. And then I found out that unfortunately, we do not value teachers in this society, so it does not pay well. B, that was at a time when there was a lot of pressure on male teachers, that there are a lot of scandals and things like that. There's many wonderful male teachers I've had out there, but there were a lot of false accusations right around the time that I was entering the teacher market. And the other thing was, so I didn't want to deal with that, by the way. Like, no, I'm not having my entire career ruined by somebody with a false accusation. And then the third thing was that at the school I went to, University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, the education program was ridiculously competitive. They would take 19 or 20 year for a school of 9,000. And I said, you know what? I have such a little chance of getting in here. I'm going to go focus on something else that I know I'm good at, and that's talking. So I got a comms degree. Wouldn't maybe recommend getting a comms degree to everybody. Perhaps something a little bit more practical as far as like mathematics or STEM or something along those STEM degrees, I think is probably a really good idea. But pursuing that for me and getting some of the training, you can hear some of that still today. Actually, a lot of it still today. Half of what you hear from me when I speak is what nature gave me, and the other half is what the university taught me, which is great. So it's been a kind of a wild ride. And then we went down the customer service road like we talked about earlier, and now we got an audio company.
Awesome. Let's talk about the split during COVID. The pandemic happens, you're out of work. It has to be a pretty emotional time because I talk to people all the time where this has happened. And, but I talked to 2 people, and there's 2 different attitudes people can take. And I've seen both attitudes. It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you find yourself out of work, and now this is going to be the most miserable experience of my life because I'm going to do something just to put food on the table. And you may have to do that for a period of time.
Yes, you may.
But they look at it as a total devastation. And then I've talked to people that I've interviewed on the show that said it's the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life. Because it finally made me wake up and change something that I would never do before. And so can you talk to me about what you went through emotionally and then actually jumping into the full-time, hey, I'm on my own, I own my own audio company now?
Yeah, definitely, Zach. And that's something that was a journey that was had almost earlier in life than before the pandemic, which is really interesting. Back in 2012, I used to work for that Major League Sports team, and I managed their retail stores, which that's an insanity. Like Oh, I'd never want to go back to Miller Park in the stores again, because I literally worked 100 hours a week, would drive home, sleep for 4 hours, and come back to the stadium, because I was working literally 18-hour days on some of these giant home stands that the Milwaukee Brewers used to have. I failed that job. I was fired from that job. And so I was unemployed basically in the depths of the Great Recession, which was just awful. And I came home and I was distraught. I had tears in my eyes. I called my dad. I was like, Dad, something terrible happening. I was fired. No, not laid off, not anything. I was fired, and that was my fault. But anyway, the conversation I had with my wife shaped how the 2020 conversation about unemployment went. And I'm going to tell you what that is, and it goes a little something like this. I came home and I sat my wife Katie down and I said, "Hey, something really, really unfortunate has happened to us today, and I failed us. We were newly married at the time, 3 months in, and I said I have failed us as a team here, and I'm really sorry. I gave it everything I had." And of course, she had seen that. She had seen me come home at 2 a.m. and leave at 7. Things like that. I had tears in my eyes and things. I said I lost my job. I failed. I was fired. And she said, "You know what? Okay. You have the weekend to handle this. You have the weekend to handle this emotionally. And on Monday morning at 8 a.m., I never want to hear a negative word about it again." And that was this snap moment for me of, yes, you can grieve your loss. You can grieve losing a position you enjoyed, or just the fact that you're out of work. But you need to get yourself out of that hole. And it took probably some of the toughest love I've ever gotten to really say, wow, you know what? Yeah, you're right. You got to get back on the horse on Monday morning. And that's going to be a slightly different timeline for everybody, depending on how they process that emotion. So if you take that and flash forward to 2020, we had about a 48 hours knowledge that I was going to lose that position I was in this time. And we got even back on the horse faster because we had the 48 hours heads up. So I knew on Monday that there might be layoffs, or, I was a contractor, so they just let us all go. I knew on Monday, and that night I threw out 10 resumes. I threw out 10 job applications. The next day, they actually said, "Hey, you're gone on Thursday." And it was like, oh, this sucks. But I'm already ahead of the game. I'm ahead of everybody else in this company, major HVAC company in Milwaukee. I'm ahead of everybody else by 24 hours. And I kept on pumping out resumes the next 3 days. And by the time I was done on Thursday and had cut ties with that company, everything like that, I had 30, 35 resumes in the pipe already, ahead of everybody else who had just been cut. And that's the thing that I think for a lot of people, it was very emotional, because it brought me back to that time, that really bad time in 2012, where it was like, oh man, this is really, almost a little PTSD, but not maybe that deep, if you will. But it was something that I said, you know what, I've got all the free time in the world now. I have to do two things. I have to apply for jobs and make sure that the government benefits are helping us stay afloat. And I can do whatever the heck else I want. And I will admit, first week of that, man, did I play the video games. Holy cow, it was like a giant vacation. And I hadn't had a vacation in about 3 years, which is fine. But when you're in that situation and you've had that severing of your income, you got to get back on the horse as fast as possible. You have to get right up here and right in here so that you can move forward as a prospective job seeker.
Awesome. Great advice. I think that's spot on. Like you said, you're going to have to work through the emotions. It's going to be a tough situation, but you can really decide what area you want to go into. And, I told this story the other day. I said, when the pandemic first hit, you find yourself working from home, I found my Netflix TV watching shows where I could memorize every line of the Tiger King. And then I looked at my phone and realized, wow, I'm spending 13 hours a day on my phone. And something had to change for me. And for me, that was doing more development than I've ever had in my career in this year. And so I made that shift, but it's got to be a mindset, because it certainly is just easier to sit on the couch, eat a nice pizza, watch the Tiger King, um, and continue that road. But I think this year it can really change your direction if you do something different. So thanks for sharing. I did want to get to the question that came in.
Sure.
What's the hardest part of being an entrepreneur that somebody writes in?
I think the hardest part of being an entrepreneur is that if I know I have entrepreneurial tendencies, and that's me stepping outside of my box a little bit. There are other people who have much greater entrepreneurial tendencies. If you don't have these somewhat inbuilt in you, it's really scary to step out into the world and go, you're on your own. There's nobody to ask for questions or things like, I mean, you have Google. Yes, you do. But there's nobody you can go down a cubicle to, or down or ask your director or whatever, like, hey man, this is a thing I have a challenge with. You're an army of one. You really are. And I think that that's probably the biggest thing that's a challenge about being an entrepreneur. For example, today I realized that my email newsletter for this week, that I hadn't written it. I forgot to put it on my to-do list on Monday. And I went, oh my God, this is supposed to launch in 3 or 4 hours. And I have nobody to delegate this to. Like, I have other stuff to do with the business, and I can't. There's nobody else, man. So it was a tight squeeze. We got it taken care of. But at the same time, realizing that everything that is in the business, whether you love it, whether it's middling, or whether you absolutely hate it, it all falls on you. It doesn't matter, because there is probably nobody else. And yeah, maybe you'll hire some help someday. Maybe you'll get somebody who is a personal assistant or a business development rep or something like that. But for the most part, until you're a company of maybe 20 or so, or 15, things fall 100% on you. And that's the most challenging thing about being an entrepreneur, because sometimes you're way out of your depth. You are way out of what you've done. I mean, I have learned so much this year about marketing, about design, about social media, like postings and things like that. This is stuff I didn't know 2 years ago, even when I was, again, working at an Inc. 5000 company with all of the people who knew stuff like this around me. Now, thankfully, I've made some phone calls and had them help me out, but I'm still the one who has to do it. I'm the one who has to figure out Instagram stories and all these things like that, these things that I hadn't done ever.
No, and I think that's a great point, because first of all, you can tap your network to see, that's why I always encourage people to network. It can always help you no matter what. I don't care if they're a janitor. I don't care what they do in life. They can always be important to your contacts. And treat everybody the same, treat everybody equal, and treat everyone as a future network. And that's how you really grow your network. So you're able to do that and help your business. But I think you also mentioned that, there's no one there to ask for. So it's easier if you're in a corporate job just to say, hey, boss, What do you think about this? Or, did I write this right? Or did I do this correctly? And I always heard this famous quote from an entrepreneur. They said the ugliest boss they've ever had to look at, the meanest and nastiest, was the person in the mirror.
Yep, absolutely.
So I always love that quote. So, Rob, thank you so much for joining the show. This has been so
my pleasure.
It's been so insightful. I think this will help a lot of people out there who are interested in either audio, where they've had this passion for an audio, where there's lots of different careers. Maybe they want to start their own audio company, or B, they learn the entrepreneurial side, where you've taken your skills and your abilities and you apply that particular career. And there's so many different entrepreneurial careers out there that you can do. It's not just audio. I just interviewed an entrepreneur the other day in PR, public relations. So, there's so many different fields. And so thank you for specifically sharing your story about the audio world. We appreciate it.
Definitely, Zach. It was a pleasure to be here. And I would encourage folks, if they have more questions about this kind of area, reach out to me.
That's the beauty about this platform. if you guys, if you're out there listening, link in with these people. You know, I hear all the time students say, well, I'm afraid to reach out to somebody. Well, these people are openly telling you to link in with them. So
Yes.
Go ahead and do it and take advantage of that resource. So Rob, have a great day, and we'll be in touch soon.
Sounds like a plan, Zach. Thanks again for having me. Take care.
Take care.